He's a regular. His name is Brian Runk. Welcome back, Dad.
Yes.
To the show.
You know, it's important now, but wait till the baby boomers start hitting and all the expectations they're going to have because they haven't been living in farmhouses.
You were the first person they ever let design independently of their professional designers.
A lot of times you see splendor and you see grandeur when others don't. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, again, I truly believe that we make the statement that the spaces in which we live and thrive and are a part of every day are really speaking to our psyche and soul.
Sure did. Exactly right.
To go get some ice
Some ice cream, yes. And it's so exciting to be a part of.
Amazing.
It really is. It's one of the biggest things I think we've learned.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, it's important. Make sure you go like, follow, and subscribe to any of our podcast channels. And make sure you leave us a comment. It really helps get our information out to those folks who need it, gets the algorithm pushing the content, and it would mean the world to us. Plus, we love to engage with our listeners. But without further ado, let's get started. Grab your favorite cup of coffee and pull up a seat and join us right here on Around the Table with Vickie. I'm your co-host, Chris Runk, and to my left, as always, is my mother, your host. We're right here around her table. Ladies and gentlemen, Vickie Runk.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here and excited again to bring up some topics that I think will be interesting to folks today.
And today, Mom, we have a guest joining us on the show. He's a regular. His name is Brian Runk. Welcome back, Dad.
Yes.
To the show.
Glad to be here.
And anytime he's on the show, it means we're talking about some history, some Runk and Pratt things typically, and that is what we are going to do today. I'm excited about the show today. This is a topic that not many people, I think, is on the forefront of their mind, but when you are selecting a senior living facility or you're looking for somewhere to call home, it's a very important topic, and that is the topic of interior design in senior living, which is something that you both are well known for in the senior space and specifically in our area. So today we'll be talking about something we don't always think about when we talk about senior living, and that is the spaces themselves. Not just how they look, but how they make people feel, how they function, and ultimately how they affect someone's quality of life. So, Mom, you've become known for creating and decorating beautiful senior living communities. Can you kind of talk about where that passion comes from?
Yeah, you know, I've been doing senior care for, goodness, this is really going to date me, but almost 40 years in some capacity. I started out in a very sterile environment in a nursing home locally, and then transferred into assisted living, independent living, and memory care. And out of that, my time, I've been able to watch people as they react to spaces that they're wheeled into in a wheelchair or that they're placed at a dining room table. And not only their reactions as a resident and a client of ours, but the family's reaction when they go to interact with their loved one. And I early on recognized the need for a space to speak to an individual. And I've always said, anytime I'm approached about this topic, that I believe that colors and design and spaces really help heal a psyche and soul, which is so important when we're motivating these senior adults to come out of their rooms and come down to activities and not be threatened by a larger space or a lot of people in it, that they feel comfortable, that they feel comforted, and that they're receiving the space in which they've been given to live in.
Was there a moment that you realized that environment surrounding a resident could have real impact in their quality of life?
I think early on, and Brian, you'll remember this. Let's get you talking a little bit here. When we had our very first facility, which in Spout Springs, Virginia, just down the road towards historic Appomattox Courthouse that's right here in our backyard, and we're privileged to live around so much history here in Lynchburg. But our first facility was literally a small little home that had been an assisted living home for a great number of years, and they were kind of piled in this small home, and I needed to figure out how to make that old space become something that I was comfortable in being in every day, because we had to go to work, right, Brian? We went down the road, and we had to be in those spaces. And so how could I create a space that was warm and inviting, but also all of the residents that lived there were lower income auxiliary grant patients, and most of them had not have the privilege of living in anything that was that we would say grand, right? It was just a little country home, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they're leaving their space in which they've lived all this time and now coming into a care community. And it just, the thoughts of creating something special for them just really kind of dominated our way of thinking. It was always about the care, but then the space became so important because you could see them whenever you would do something overnight. Brian, you remember going in and we would, change a space up. We put some new furniture in or paint a wall, and you could see it on their face. It was visible. It was a visible contact of enjoyment and a new vigor to get out of their room. And I mean, you can talk to that as well.
I just remember back in the days of that first facility. I remember when we first saw us, I wasn't really even sure what you were thinking. What, just didn't have that appeal that we were looking for. And that was your whole desire, was to try to create something that would be inviting and appealing for the residents. And, back in the day, your dad and your mom were involved as well. And your dad and I often did. I remember putting down carpet and building shelves and painting outside and all those kind of things. And so we were hands-on with all that kind of stuff. And it was when you could see the things that you've done that next morning when they woke up or coming to breakfast, they were, it just seemed to make their day, which was rewarding to us as well, because they were just little things. But to them, they were really, really big things. And it changes their attitude, changes their perspective, and ultimately changes how they feel about themselves.
Yeah, so true.
So, I mean, I remember doing this as a child. You just alluded to it. I'm going to say your little furniture elves.
Yeah.
Like you would just go in and move things at midnight. I mean, I can't how many times that myself and Dad have basically have been your moving crew throughout the years. And you're right. It's so rewarding when you tell nobody you changed the space. And as a designer, you can just sit back and watch them light up and really enjoy the thought process that you put behind it, because there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And you also mentioned that they're leaving their home, which is a big enough deal, right? That's a big life change. So you wanted them to have, would you say, an upgrade?
Oh, absolutely. It's hard enough for that heart to yearn for home. And sitting in that easy chair and, the remote that you've been pressing all those years and looking across and seeing a certain tree or your bird feeder. There's so much that goes into the psyche of leaving home, and then to come into a space that they're probably never going to leave. And we don't talk about that, but it's very true. That's where they'll probably end up spending their last days. We wanted to create a space that they really yearned to be in, that it was easy for the adjustment to take place. And again, not only for them, but the family as well, because you got grandchildren coming through the door. You have, nieces and nephews that visit on special occasions. And so you want the environment to always be inviting. And back then we were really on a shoestring budget. And so I had to use a lot of my own personal talents and bring my own stuff at times to make sure that it looked the way I wanted it to look.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know you have such a passion for design, not only in the senior space, but I think that fed from a personal space, growing up and maybe being in your early 20s, you would love to design your home in such a and then I think that was a natural progression for you. It seems pretty easy, would you say? Although, most people found it pretty hard. I know sometimes I look at space, I see that, and Dad alluded to it. A lot of times you see splendor and you see grandeur when others don't. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think that comes from a passion for what you do. So anytime you are very passionate about creating something, then it does come easy for you. And we've talked here at the show about how when God's in it, it's easy too. You don't have to force it; it just happens. But yeah, early on, I became in my early teen years kind of a Martha Stewart kind of figure in our family. And if we had a special occasion, my mother wouldn't do it. She would ask for me to do it. And it just became kind of normal that Vickie would do the birthday parties, or she would decorate for Christmas, or she would redesign the living room, even if it was just moving a couple pieces in the furniture around in the house. And believe you me, I have moved my fair share of furniture. Even when we first got married, he'd say, I'll move that tonight. And before he got home, I'd already moved it. And it was really too large for me to move, but I didn't want to wait. I wanted it right then. That's another problem I have. I want everything right now.
No, you're
I will
kidding.
second that one. That is definitely the case.
Yeah. So it did always come easy for me. There's times that I will close my eyes and patterns and colors just appear, and I hurry and go write everything down. Sometimes I'll say to Christopher, give me your phone. I got to write this down. I got to remember what I'm doing here. Or I'll see some colors coming through on a Benjamin Moore site or Sherwin-Williams, and I'll snap them on my phone, screenshot them, not snap them. And I'll remember that color, and then I've always been really good at colors. And so creating those spaces with really beautiful colors has been something that I've really enjoyed. But it did always come pretty easy, and it started young. I started young in my way of thinking about design. And then as we got married and got our own home, my mother-in-law would always be, looking forward to coming to visit to see what we'd done to the house, because I always bought a fixer-upper. Remember, Brian, everything we bought was a fixer-upper. And then she would love to sit at my table and eat our meals. I'd always make it special. And so I've always had that inclination to throw some hospitality in to whoever we're entertaining, make sure I go the extra mile, fresh flowers, certain linens. And it just something that always came to me.
I think it's amazing to watch, your God-given passion, your God-given talent for design, throughout the years. You mentioned decorating for Thanksgiving and fall and Christmas and spring and Easter. And we decorate for every holiday, it feels like, at the house. So enjoying that and bringing that to life for your residents, and then later in your company development for hospitality and others to come in and enjoy your spaces. So seeing that go from a personal to a business plan has been awesome to watch.
Not so much to do, though, right?
No.
And I think you've always been good at recycling things too. I mean, you were always looking for, little stuff, changing the color, just moving furniture around, and then oftentimes that piece of furniture, whatever, would end up going somewhere else. So you were always good at recycling stuff. We were always good at, finding new things and sort of making those spaces work.
Well, for a long time, we had a couple of guys that worked for me, and we would create old pieces of furniture and make them custom to the room. And so whatever I had going on the wall would come down to the furniture, might even go up to the ceiling. And so then when you walk into the room, everybody gasps because it looks like you have had this major designer come from Italy to do all your stuff, when in fact it was just an idea that I had. And for years, people would say, how do you do this? I mean, we just had a realtor recently go through a past design home that I had flipped. And 10 years later, he's going through it. And he said, I just can't believe what you've done here. And a lot of it was just so natural for me. It just came and flowed. And I've enjoyed doing the furniture and the walls and the spaces. I just love it. And I don't have the time to do it as much as I used to. But when I get something going and we actually see it come, now sometimes I have to start over once or twice. We're doing that right now on a project. I had something straight and I made them rip it all out and we started over again. But, eventually we get to something really great that we'd love to share with our friends, families, and the public.
And for the most part, you really operate on a reasonable budget. The things, like you were saying, look like we maybe spent a lot of money on it, but the part of the fun is that you really haven't. And we've been blessed in the past to even have, employees that were very talented,
Oh, absolutely.
and oftentimes we had a family one time, well, for several years, that was very talented with textures and painting and stuff. And when you were creating furniture with them, I think they got as much enjoyment out of that as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
And
Taught some new trades to people.
exactly. And then not just our residents, but even our staff. I think just the change of environment, the change in, you being interested enough to make their spaces that they work in and live in special. I think it really globally helps everybody.
Well, again, I truly believe that we make the statement that the spaces in which we live and thrive and are a part of every day are really speaking to our psyche and soul. And I know when something's cluttered, I'm not exactly happy. Christopher's a lot
Yeah.
that way too.
Yeah.
And, when something's not exactly, if there's something wrong with the wall, I'm going to need to have that fixed right away. And so just really kind of pretty picky about things has helped us in business, really.
Attention to detail. And you're right. I do have to typically clean up my space and have it perfect before I can work.
Or before you leave the house for a trip, which makes for sometimes a 2 or 3 hour delay.
you don't need to tell everybody that. Put that on
I
the
think I
airwaves.
created that monster, so I'm going to have to own it.
Dad, you just alluded to this, but when you guys walk into a senior living facility for the first time, and I've been on some of those trips with you guys, and you're like, whoa, what do you notice the most in a design aspect that maybe others never would?
Well, I think first of all, especially I sort of know your thought pattern and what you're thinking because I've been around it so long. But one thing for us that she's very big on lighter colors. We've taken trips to Florida and gone to the villages, and we're big on Disney and all these kind of things. And they use a lot of lighter, brighter. We think in our spaces, natural light and things, and not being dark is super important. So you don't see a lot of darker woods. And I know there's people that love that, but I don't really think that's ever been your flair. You've always been lighter colors. The floors have been lighter, and it just makes the space brighter and more
Inviting.
inviting to folks. Yes.
Yeah, and for me, I'm always looking at lighting. How dark is it in there for them? I've always say this too. I'm kind of known for saying this. We have enough gray days in our lives. It seems like winter lasts forever. And even in spring and summer, sometimes we get those gray days where it's rainy. One of them, it's like that today. It's rainy and overcast. And you immediately you open the blinds and you think, it's going to be one of those kind of days. But if you walk into a space that's well lit and it has some life about it and the colors are soothing and calm and spa-like, your attitude changes immediately than when you step back outside in that gray day. So if we can create our spaces for our seniors that are constantly, soothing and inspiring, then I feel like we combat a lot of depression and anxiety. A lot of the mental illnesses that come across with aging is really somewhat dialed down when you get into a cool, soothing space.
Well, I also feel that people, even like your parents, your grandparents growing up, they always love to watch construction and things happening, and they always like to see as things progress. And I think oftentimes when you start a project, they talk amongst themselves as to what's this going to look like, and I think it's going to be this. And so they get engaged as well, and they love to see the spaces.
Well,
they
and
love
on
to
that
see those
topic,
changes.
we usually change an interior space in our care facilities at least every 5 to 7 years.
Right.
So it seems like, Christopher, I have always got something changing and evolving and a new wall or a new piece of furniture. And I actually have a warehouse here where we work that has pieces of furniture ready to go whenever that new design happens. So I'm always at least a year or two ahead because I'm always looking for a good deal, or when a piece goes on sale and okay, I'm gonna get that now, and I'm gonna get 8 of them. And I said, and we have a couple guys that helps rotate the warehouse. They know where everything is. And I'll say, this goes to Willow Ridge, this goes to Liberty Ridge, this goes on 3rd floor dining room. Everything is kind of very intentional, and I love to be able to offer that to our customers.
You have several warehouses that I kind of keep up with. So I'm well aware of buying a piece of furniture and what are we going to do with that, Mom? I don't know. Just
That's
keep
right.
it. It's
Just
great.
keep it.
I
I'll
think
need it somewhere.
things definitely get recycled. I mean, we don't, very seldom do we give things away that much. It gets used in a different space, and then you get on this roll where you start with something and it ends up impacting other spaces, or I mean, that's part of the process. As you create a new space, you're sort of finding a home for the old thing, and that becomes new as well.
That's right.
Why do you feel like, and there's some really great senior living facilities out there, but there's also a lot of pretty poor ones throughout the nation.
That's right.
Why do you feel so many senior living communities still look and feel with the classic stigma of a senior living facility?
Well, there's two or three aspects to that. The first of all being the owner of the community just doesn't want to spend the money. They don't want to take the effort. When I say spend the money, if I wasn't doing this myself, and Caitlin, and we forgot that Caitlin is a very big, donor into what we do here. She has a degree in interior design. I do not. I just woke up one day and was gifted with it, which I'm thankful for. We would be paying upwards of $80,000 to $120,000 every time we redesigned a facility, maybe more if you're talking about furnishings, but just for the expertise of that designer to put things on a CAD program and to help you find your furniture, to coordinate your carpets and your flooring and all that. So in the early days, the gift that I was given was really used out of necessity to save money on whatever project we had going.
Well, on that topic, I mean, I think if you ask me when did you start to see this the most, when we were doing Liberty Ridge, I think what I would have to say was when that started, because the company that we were working with had a professional designer, and she typically did this all the time for them. And I remember you had some issues with more of the dark colors and the style, and you were thinking, well, this is going to be our facility, and you asked if you could go in and become that person. And I know it was a big deal for them and for us, but I think from that point going forward, a lot of that creation of knowing that you could do that because of what you created.
It was a big building. I'd never
It was a
done
big
anything
deal.
like that before.
And honestly, they were so impressed that a lot of the things that we did, we ended up seeing in some of their other properties that they were doing elsewhere with that. So I think
All the way to
Yeah, I
Texas.
think that was a
Yeah.
big compliment to you as well.
Oh, it was. That at that point, it really validated that I truly had something to give. It wasn't just in my head. Some people think, oh, I can do really good at that. I mean, I'd like to think that, I'm good at something, but maybe I'm really not. But whenever you have professionals, interior designers from Texas saying to you, can we come through your facility and take pictures? And all of a sudden that company says you can design whatever you want to because
Well, even
we
that
love it so
situation,
much.
you were the first person with them, and they designed places all up and down the East Coast. You were the first person they ever let design independently of their professional designers.
Yeah, and I think from that moment on, I really was validated. I always knew, but it validates what you've been trying to do all those years. And I think another aspect, Christopher, the question you just asked is simply owners just don't know how.
Sure.
They don't know what that resident and that family is looking for because sometimes they've never taken the time to ask. Or they've never taken the time to actually be on the floor and watch reactions or study, the way we do on some articles about trends in senior living. You sent me a very daunting article the other day that I shared with some of our marketers about how in the future this is going to be even more important. It's important now, but wait till the baby boomers start hitting and all the expectations they're going to have because they haven't been living in farmhouses. They've been, successful people and they're really going to miss their environment if we're not creating that somewhat for them. Care is always super important and it's number one, but that environment is going to be really, really important.
Well, the environment is really what brings them to you. I mean, they shop other places, but it's just like buying a car. At the end of the day, what is it about that place that you want to go to? I mean, care is important, but obviously what your room, what your space looks like, how you feel when you walk in. And I think that, you and Caitlin do a great job with creating that. And the other thing that I'd like to say is oftentimes you are always aware of your cost. A lot of people probably think, well, she just gets whatever you really.
You don't let me get whatever.
I really don't let that happen. I try to, it causes problems at times, but I really try to make sure that you are reasonable with that. And I think you've always done a good job at even though maybe they don't look like.
We could probably do a show
Yeah.
really giving tricks of the trade, like design
Like an HD
on the
TV
9.
on designing on a dime kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Because I think part of your fulfillment is not just that it looks good, that I found this cool thing in a space, or we figured out how to do this, and it looks like you spent a fortune and you really didn't.
Well, there's lots of times you'll walk into a space after I'm done and you'll say, "Now, how much did this
Yeah.
cost?" And I'll say, "Not what you
A
think."
lot of times.
And so I think the answer to those questions is just the operators don't know where to start. They don't know what they're looking for. They don't understand their
Or
client.
they don't know the impact. I mean,
And they don't know the
oftentimes
impact.
for them, or even more of a national operator, they have so many facilities and they're not even in them. I mean, we get to personally see on a tour how that impacts somebody, or even you're out at a restaurant and somebody said, "I love what you just did. That looks great." Well, you get affirmation right away of those kind of things. So we know the importance of what that does to our local clientele. Maybe if you're more on a national level, you just don't. That's not important.
I think that's a big point of it right there, and we see it all the time, and it's becoming a more and more of a trend in the senior space, is that these properties are just being bought up by venture capitalists and these different REITs and foreign investors, and they're squeezing every penny out of the budget and trying to maximize profits, and they never have even walked in these facilities.
So important to check that out before you place your loved one. Absolutely.
Yeah, we just were working with a facility as a consultant that they were out of Florida, and basically the owner hadn't even been in this facility that we were looking at for him for 2 years, and that you can't do that. I mean, I guess you can do that, but your success rate and how your residents feel it's not
That's
measured.
something to really bring, especially to our local listeners, the exposure in which an owner has to the environment in which your people that you love lives in every day is ultra important. And if you can't find that in wherever you're placing mom, not just the administrator, but ownership.
Yeah.
And I think you could go both ways with this question I'm about to ask. But when you're designing for senior living, are you designing for the resident that lives there, or the adult child who is often making the decision to place mom and dad there?
So that's a layered question. So I would say initially I am designing for the adult children that are coming through the door. But then when you go deeper into the facility, I'm designing for the client themselves, because I'm considering several different issues here. Safety. How safe is that product that I'm putting in that space, whether it be flooring or a chair or a handrail, or, if we're going to have to turn a corner too quickly and I've got to consider moving that piece of furniture out of the way so she or he does not hit it with a walker and cause a fall. I'm always fall aware. And I'm always spatially looking at anything that could cause them to trip or fall. So I think initially when those first rooms that you come through the doors, it's for the family. But then as you go deeper into the community, I'm completely considering how easy it is for that resident to get to and from the space. And then when they're sitting in a room, how they feel. And I just designed the common spaces of the homes. We allow the resident to bring in everything from home to make it feel like what they want to be in inside their own private room. And so we encourage the same recliner, pictures of the family, the same comforter that they've used. Maybe they have a special blanket that they've used throughout the years. We want all of their internal living spaces that they're going to be in privately to be exactly what they want it to be.
Well, even on that point too, oftentimes families will bring that special recliner, and we encourage that. But a lot of them end up going and getting mom and dad new stuff, and they're excited because they haven't had things for years. They've had the same old things, and so now they have new stuff, and like, wow, look at my new bed. It isn't as nice, and so I think a lot of times that kind of thing helps them adjust better as
It's
well.
normal for me to design a living space, a common space in one of our larger communities, and to get emails from families saying, where did you get those sofas? I just love the color. It's always about the color.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I want to make sure that the common spaces where they're sitting, that the furniture is comfortable. If it's not, I will hear about it. I will get 10 to 15 emails by the end of the time that I've placed that furniture there. And I want to make sure that the height is right, because that's important to them too. Just the durability of everything. So
Well, I know you made issues in the past where we've got chairs that were maybe too low and they looked amazing, but they were hard to get out of and stuff.
Yes.
So I do think you like when those things happen, you learn from that, and you're always learning. We were at some place the other day and that happened with the chair. You said the chair was too small.
Yeah.
It's something that I like, but size-wise, it's not going to work. So it's really not just about how it looks. It's also how practical it is in the space, especially for the kind of population that we serve.
And I'm going to plug a local business here, but we are using Old Dominion furniture for our dining spaces, and we consider all things like getting up and down easily, if the chair moves, if it glides. So shout out to Old Dominion. They've done a ton of work for us.
Well, that's a great spot for us to end the show today. Sadly, we're out of time. This has been a wonderful discussion, a wonderful topic. We're going to continue this next week, so make sure you tune in for part 2 of interior design. And we'll keep on talking about, I got a lot more questions I want to get to, so we'll definitely do that. But Mom, I know you like to end each show with a quote, so take it away.
Well, simply put today, a room should never allow the eye to settle in one place. It should smile at you and create a fantasy. That's truly what I believe. I get super excited when we talk about creating spaces for our seniors and people that come into our spaces for hospitality. I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll continue our chat in just a little bit, and we'll see you next week right here around the table.